Same car, but different. The Matrix and the Vibe. To understand the reason these cars came to exist, we need to go back in the early 1980s. One of the two biggest rivals, General Motors and Toyota, decided to team up. On the surface, they couldn't be more different. GM was the king of mass production but struggled with quality control, while Toyota had mastered efficiency and reliability but needed to learn how to work with American workers since they didn't have any factories in the US. Their solution? A joint venture called NUMMI, New United Motor Manufacturing Inc., a factory in Fremont, California, where Toyota would introduce its just-in-time production system and GM would provide the facility and workforce. It was a win-win situation where GM will improve its manufacturing and Toyota will gain valuable experience operating in North America. The first car to come out of NUMMI was the Chevrolet Nova, not the V8 muscle car from the 60s, but a rebadged Toyota Sprinter. This was GM's first real experiment in taking a Toyota product, slapping its badge on it, and selling it as its own. The formula worked well enough to continue with the Geo Prism, essentially a Toyota Corolla in disguise. Actually, by looking at some ads, GM didn't have any shame saying that this was just a Corolla with a few more options and a cheaper price. By the early 2000s, small practical hatchbacks were gaining traction and both GM and Toyota saw an opportunity. But this time GM didn't just want another rebadged car. Instead of slapping the Pontiac badge on a Toyota and calling it a day, they decided to give the Vibe its own distinct look while still sharing the same Toyota underpinnings. The Toyota Matrix and Pontiac Vibe were both built on the Toyota Corolla platform, offering a mix of a car-like handling and SUV-style versatility. Despite the shared DNA, they were assembled in different locations. The Matrix was built in Toyota's plant in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, and the Vibe was built in NUMMI in Fremont, California. Exterior styling. The Vibe was GM's attempt to inject some bold styling in a practical hatchback, and it took some cues, both good and bad, from the infamous Pontiac Aztek. While the Aztek was widely mocked for its awkward proportions, GM saw a potential in the adventurous design elements. The Vibe inherited some of the rugged character, but in much smaller and less offensive package. It featured plastic cladding along the lower body for a more rugged look. The rear window could open separately from the hatch, handy for quick cargo access. Of course, being a Pontiac, it had to look sporty. The Vibe carried signature Pontiac styling cues like the wide twin-port grille, sharp headlights, and a more aggressive stance than the Matrix. At the 2001 SEMA show, GM even unveiled a prototype called the Vibe GTR, a high-performance concept that hinted at serious potential, but sadly it never made it to production. The Toyota Matrix was designed with younger buyers in mind, people who wanted something practical like a hatchback but with a touch of SUV versatility. At the time, small crossovers weren't yet dominating the market, so the Matrix filled the gap by offering a high riding stance with extra cargo space and a sporty design. Unlike the more angular Pontiac Vibe, the Matrix had a sleeker, more aerodynamic shape, borrowing styling cues from the Toyota Celica and Corolla. Toyota's marketing leaned heavily on the Matrix utility. Many early ads show it packed with gear, bikes, snowboards, camping equipment, emphasizing its ability to handle an active lifestyle. It was a car for people who needed space but didn't want a bulky SUV. With its sloped roofline and hatchback profile, the Matrix managed to blend sportiness with everyday practicality, making it a unique option in the early 2000s, before small crossovers took over. Now, before continuing, if you appreciate this video, please subscribe and leave a comment as well. Interior design. At first glance, the interiors of the Vibe and the Matrix looked nearly identical. Same dashboard layout, same center console, and the only obvious difference being the badge on the steering wheel. But after digging deeper on the internet, I found some subtle but interesting differences, thanks to a comment from someone who had first-hand experience at the NUMMI factory. While the overall design was shared, GM sourced interior components from different suppliers than Toyota. This meant that plastics in the Vibe and Matrix weren't quite the same, though visually they appear identical. The biggest differences were in the wiring. GM ordered its own wiring harnesses, which were thinner in certain areas and lacked the split looms found in Toyota's setup. Other small differences include the audio system. GM offered a Monsoon-branded setup with Delphi and Pioneer components, while Toyota had its own system. Early Matrix models also didn't come with a power inverter, which was standard across all Vibe trims. Even the seats materials weren't 100% identical. The Vibe offered optional leather seats while the Matrix never did. They both had a very practical interior with unique features. For example, the trunk design had no carpet, just durable plastic with non-slip rubber stripes to keep the cargo from sliding around. It was easier to clean too. Another smart touch, well, the front passenger seat could fold completely flat, allowing for longer items to fit from the dash to the hatch. They could have cut costs by skipping on these features, but they didn't. The powertrain. One of the biggest advantages of the Matrix and Vibe was that Toyota supplied all the mechanical components. That meant buyers got Toyota's reputation for reliability, making these hatchbacks a solid choice. Both models used the same 1.8-liter four-cylinder engines found in the Corolla. For those wanted more excitement, the Vibe GT and Matrix XRS features the 2ZZ-GE engine, borrowed from the Celica GTS, delivering 180 horsepower with a high revving personality. Another rare feature for a compact hatchback was the optional all-wheel drive, giving these cars extra capability in poor weather. While the drivetrain was nearly identical, there were still some very minor mechanical differences. The Matrix and Vibe had a different AC compressors, heater cores, heater hoses, and serpentine belts, though these variations didn't affect performances. Now, not many people know this, but there was actually a third model in the Matrix Vibe family, the Toyota Voltz. From 2002 to 2004, Toyota took the Pontiac Vibe, converted it to right-hand drive, and sold it in Japan as the Voltz. However, it never really caught on, and after just 2 years, Toyota quietly discontinued it due to poor sales. What I really don't understand is that Toyota already had the Matrix, so why rebadge a Vibe, which was already a rebadged Matrix? To make it even more bizarre, the Toyota gave the Voltz the Matrix interior, making it a weird hybrid of both models. And then there was the front grille. Toyota didn't want to redesign it, but they couldn't just stick a Toyota badge on the thin divider where the Pontiac logo used to be. Their solution? Creating a brand new V emblem, the same size as the Pontiac badge. So the Voltz ended up being a badge-engineered car made from another badge-engineered car. Or if you prefer, a Toyota-branded Pontiac version of a Toyota. Probably a first in the automotive industry. But let's talk about sales now. The Matrix and Vibe were initially well received, but tracking the exact sales number is very tricky since Toyota combined the Matrix sales with the Corolla sales in the US, making it impossible to pinpoint the exact figures. In Canada, however, the Matrix sold quite well, often doubling the sales of the Vibe. That may not seem like a lot, but considering that Canada's population is smaller than California's, these numbers are quite impressive. Despite the Matrix outselling the Vibe, GM sales numbers were still solid enough to justify a second generation of this model. So let's talk about that, the second generation. In 2009, the redesign brought a more modern look and updated technology, but in doing so, it lost some of its original rugged charm. By the mid-2000s, compact hatchbacks were shifting towards a slicker, more refined design, and GM and Toyota followed suit. The second-gen Matrix and Vibe looked less like a mini SUV and more like a traditional sporty hatchback, though they still kept their versatile interiors. Inside, both models maintain a funkier, more dynamic dashboard design than the Corolla that they were based on, with an instrument cluster that looked almost eager to jump out at you. Mechanically, the base model still used a 1.8-liter engine, now tuned for better fuel efficiency. For those wanting a bit more power, there was the 2.4-liter engine from the Camry that was offered only on the Vibe GT, Matrix S, and Matrix XRS. All-wheel drive made a return, but this time it was only available with the 2.4-liter engine. I actually own a 2011 Matrix S all-wheel drive. At that time, about 10 years ago, I was looking to buy a used Impreza, as there weren't many small practical all-wheel drive cars available. My other choice was a Suzuki SX4, but the trunk was way too small for my needs. After struggling to find one within my budget, I stumbled upon a reasonably priced used Matrix S with all-wheel drive, and I took it. The seating position was a nice compromise between a hatchback and SUV, a lot higher than an Impreza, let's say, offering great interior space, and the all-wheel drive was quite useful in the Northeast Canadian winter. Fuel consumption was quite high, averaging around 10 liters per 100 kilometers, which is about 23.5 mpgs year-around, and closer to 13 liters per 100 kilometers during winter. This is about 18 miles per gallon. The 2.4-liter engine also burned oil, requiring me to check the oil levels from time to time. To top it off, the sunroof frame rusted completely and needed replacement just before I sold it. But anyway, let's go back to the main subject. In 2009, GM was facing several financial struggles, eventually filing from Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That April, the company reaffirmed its commitment to the NUMMI plant, but by June, it announced discontinuation of the Pontiac brand, which also meant the end of the Vibe. This led to a series of discussions between GM and Toyota, trying to figure out what vehicles could still be built at NUMMI. At one point, Toyota even offered to produce a version of the Prius for GM at that plant. However, GM didn't believe in the future of this technology, and the idea went nowhere. Talks fell apart, and in June 2009, GM pulled out. By August 2009, Toyota confirmed it would also shut down NUMMI by March 2010, marking its first ever factory closure. The final car produced was a red Toyota Corolla on April 1, 2010. Later, the plant was sold off to Tesla, becoming the Tesla Fremont factory. Then, in 2013, Toyota stopped selling the Matrix in the US due to declined sales, with no plans for a direct replacement. However, the Matrix continued in Canada for the 2014 model year, as the small crossover segment began to rise in popularity. Even today, both the Matrix and the Vibe remain solid choices in the used car market, especially since, after all, they were just Corollas with a different body. The Vibe is often the cheaper option, making it a more appealing choice for budget-conscious buyers. Today, the Corolla Cross has taken the place of the Matrix in the Toyota's lineup. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any of the funky interior looks or cool utility features that made the Vibe and Matrix stand out. It's just another boring crossover. So what do you think? Was the Matrix and Vibe duo one of the better GM-Toyota collaborations? Let me know in the comments down below, or if you own any of these cars, I want to know as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.